Get ready to skyrocket your business and experience exponential growth. Welcome to Grow with Gary, the podcast dedicated to helping you navigate the ins and outs of business and entrepreneurship, bringing you compelling guest interviews with business experts, offering actionable insights and inspiring stories that humanize success. So grab your colleagues and get ready to unlock the secrets to success. Now, here's your host, business coach and owner of MICU Growth, Gary MICU Jr.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Grow with Gary, Modern Life and Business, where we're looking to humanize success. So today we have a very special guest, a fellow 10X business coach, as well as an extremely accomplished athlete in many other areas of her life, and certainly, of course, in business. So I'm happy that we have Alison Wheeler on here to join us all the way from very far away, but I will let her tell you more about that. So Alison, if you want to jump off with just a little bit about yourself and, of course, where you are right now.
Thanks, Gary. I'm in the future.
Yes.
Thank you. I am in the future in comparison, right? In terms of date and time. So I am all the way down under on the Gold. I live on the Gold Coast in Australia, so a very long way from you.
Yes.
And I am a fellow 10X business coach, and I have been coaching in business coaching for about 13 years. I am an occupational therapist by profession. I'm also a published author, #1 Amazon bestseller for my book, which is cool. I am a mum, a wife, a dog mum. I don't know. What else do you want to know?
I think that's a full summary, and we'll certainly dig in some more as we go through. I know you've got some great stories to share with us. And on that front, I did want to ask, though, what is the title of your book so that those who are listening and watching might check it out after listening today?
Yeah, see, there it is behind me. Living from the Inside Out, the Modern Day Wonder Woman. So people can jump on and get it from all your best booksellers, Amazon, etc.
Perfect. And that brings us, of course, to a nickname that sometimes come up is Wonder Woman. So now we know exactly where it comes from with the book title. So perfect. I wanted to start today with asking you about maybe what was one of your earliest experiences, whether childhood or otherwise, that really kind of sparked your interest and fueled your going into business, and particularly then into coaching later on.
Yeah, and I think, first when I was like, I've contemplated this question and I thought, I used to sell when I was very young, I used to sell things on put a little stall out in front of the house and sell things. But it actually started earlier than that because I grew up and my parents did not have a business, but my grandparents had businesses.
Okay.
So my grandparents' first business, they had a building and building supplies business, like a physical store, I don't know what you would have in the States.
Like a lumberyard supply store, something like that.
Sort of smaller, we'd have nails and all sorts of things and paint, blah, blah, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So small, kind of like that, and building, and then they sold that, and then they went into having a holiday park or which had caravan and camping sites and cabins, that kind of thing, so where people would go on holiday. Yeah. So they owned and ran that, and my parents they basically ran it and managed it, and my grandparents owned it. So so I grew up in that, we lived there. So the house was at the front, right on the beach. We lived in the main house, and my parents had effectively a granny flat. So I grew up seeing that just was normal, life, business was normal, and it was very integrated into your life. You'd get up and then you would work, right? Literally roll out the door and work because you were literally living there. So I think that started, that really probably started, that was normal. I didn't know that wasn't what was done, because that's literally what I grew up and through doing all the really crappy jobs that are part of a business, and that was normal too, through
Yeah.
to all the bigger challenges of a business, right? In terms of, acquiring customers, all those sorts of things.
Got it. Yeah. And it's funny, yes, because, right, like my parents weren't entrepreneurial. So it oftentimes comes from a grandparent or an aunt or uncle or someone else that we experience, and then we glean so much. But for you, it was so embedded because it was just, that was the day I woke up and off to my day I go, and to think nothing different. But of course, it is unique in that sense of being so closely tied in, especially at such a young age, of this is what it takes to run a business, and these are the things that go on. Yeah, and I'm wondering then, so through those experiences, or experiences later on, even if there was a particular moment that stood out as far as when you knew, I want to have my own business, right? Versus experiencing and being a part of something, but now creating something that's your own.
Yeah, so that probably came a lot later. I mean, when I was really young, we would do in that environment. My sisters and I have two sisters.
Okay.
We would put on these Christmas shows from our.
Oh, cool.
Remembering like we are like, I would have been 2, 3, 4 years old. They were like
Okay.
3 or 4 years older than I am, right? Like, so if I was 3, they were 7. So do picture it as age
Mhm.
appropriate. But we thought they were the bee's knees, right? So out of our garage, and we'd put this Christmas celebration, put the chairs out, and we'd dress up, which, I mean, I had the bum deal. I had to be Santa, and it was the most uncomfortable costume because they were handmade, the old elastic, and we'd put the
Oh, sure.
staple, the cotton wool on it, all of that. So, but it was that exchange of energy, learning to give people something that they wanted in exchange for a
Okay.
smile, a whatever, so kind of that, I guess, understanding how to exchange with people in different ways. It
Yeah.
probably started in that, but then I didn't get into business at 3 years old. Maybe a little
That would have
young.
been very impressive.
Yeah, it would have been, right. And wow, well, life would have had a very different tangent from there. But I didn't do that, and I went down the pathway of get a good education, etc. So I
Mhm.
went to university, I got my degree, but when I went through my degree, Gary, I was like, these are the jobs I'm going to have at the end of it. I'm like, I don't
Mm.
want any of those jobs, right? So I already had itchy feet, and I was very determined to have a role before I graduated in
Okay.
something that was different or interesting. So then I ended up, because I did my degree, I grew up in New Zealand, but I got offered a role in Australia, in an area
Okay.
I've never been to, didn't know much about it, and I thought, okay, yeah, that'll do. So
Sure.
I decided to take that. I cried on my first day because it was literally 700 kilometers inland in the desert. It was orange dirt. It was all like,
Wow.
holy heck. It was such a culture shock.
Mm.
So I did that for a little while. And then I moved over the other side of the country into another job to be there. My dad wasn't well, so I needed to fly back and forth to New Zealand quickly.
Okay.
And so that ended up in a very different role. Now, that role went in a very different direction than I thought it would. And I felt out of alignment with my employer. What he was saying and
Mm.
what we could deliver were not quite necessarily true.
Okay.
And I
Okay.
didn't want to be there anymore saying, yes, we
Sure.
can deliver this, when I'm like, hold on a minute. Can we really? I don't think we actually
Mm.
can.
Mm.
And there's can deliver, there's can work out how to deliver, and then
Yeah.
there's can not deliver, right? Like I
Sure.
have no problem with someone saying, yes, we can figure that out for you.
Yes.
But, that wasn't like that. So I decided to leave that role. And in leaving that role, it went really pear-shaped in leaving that role.
Mm.
And it was at that point, like that was my defining line in the sand where
Okay.
I went, I don't need other people's rubbish, right?
Mm,
I can do better myself. I'm like, what have I been doing all this time? It's
sure.
like, no. So then that's when I started to branch out to do everything independently for myself. I dabbled in different things before then, but that was kind of like my absolute definitive line in the sand.
Yeah. Yeah. And rightfully so, especially from the stance of you find yourself where you thought you were in alignment, but then define, you're like, no, this isn't me. This isn't how I ethically think things are, and not what I believe in. So that then creates all sorts of challenges then, and even probably adversity as far as do I stay? Do I go? Where do I turn to? What's next? So, through that experience and maybe through some others, were there some obstacles or challenges that, you faced, and in doing so, you learned some lessons from them?
Yeah, look, it was at that time, it probably felt like somewhat of and because I stayed in the same industry, I still
Mm,
became still within occupational therapy. I just kind of evolved,
okay.
and could continue to train, and that sort of made sense. But it was scary because at the same time as me going, well, I'm standing up for what I believe is right,
Mhm.
I'm getting attacked on the other side saying, well, no, you're wrong for doing that. So that took a
Ah,
lot of kind of work in my own mind, because they didn't necessarily agree with my
mm,
viewpoint.
mhm.
And then a lot of clients then came and found me because people are people, right?
Yes.
And they're like, well, we actually want to work with you.
Mm.
So working through, am I okay with it? Is it okay? Where does this stand? So all those kind of realigning things, there's a
You're
lot to
also
go through.
unraveling.
Yeah, a
You're
lot of
unraveling
unraveling.
things to a sense of I now have to pull these strands apart, and I have all these decision points that I have to handle these now.
Yes, yeah. So I think because at that when I did it, like, and I've had another experience which was very different to that in terms of
Mm-hmm.
like actually having to jump without having knowledge of where I was going. That one,
Okay.
I think that time, because I was still staying within the same wheelhouse, it wasn't as scary. It
Okay.
was very challenging though, emotionally, and with still, like, lawyers became involved in all sorts of things, and you still
Oh,
got
sure.
to deal with it even when I'm like, what exactly am
What now?
why? And it turns out to be nothing, but you
Mm.
still have to engage in the process, because once it's engaged one side, you can't just go, oh well, I'll just ignore that, never
I'll just
mind,
turn
hope
the
it'll go
blind eye
away.
and everything will work out. Yeah.
Exactly. You still have to seek advice and go through all that process, even if
Yes.
at the end of that it's like, yeah, there's nothing to that's it, right?
Hmm.
We look, do you know what I mean? So it's kind of like
Yes.
such a strange, surreal process where I'm like, I just left my job. Isn't it normal for people to be able to resign from their job? Well,
Yes.
sometimes apparently it isn't.
Or it's normal, but it's not quite so simple. Okay. Yes. And boy, what a challenge to face in. And where were you approximately in your life at this point, as far as, it imagines from you're still a young adult at this time
I
frame.
was still young, so I was in my early 20s. Like, I'm
Oh, okay.
young.
Yes.
Like, I'm like, it's like, hold on. And it was,
Yeah.
that was my second job after finishing my degree,
Okay.
right? So I'm
Now
kind
you're
of like,
thrown into this whole mess from standing up for something you believed in, and not even directly fighting with it, but just choosing to go another route that should have been a clean thing, and clean and simple turned out not to be. Wow. So
correct.
so definitely a challenge and adversity to face, especially at such a young age when you're still trying to figure out literally everything else. And now I have that all thrown at you, especially as lawyers get involved. That's a whole nother ball game, and at that age, there's no way to expect that. So
No.
I imagine along, whether through that experience or for others, that you had mentors, that you had people who gave you guidance. Um, do you have a couple of those individuals who come to mind of, being a mentor, helping guide you through either that or similar situations, that really their advice has stayed with you and allowed you to create the success that you have now?
Yeah, look, I think a few things, because later, um, further after that, and when I had my daughter, we went into a
Mm.
network marketing company, very, very successful in that. And then when COVID hit, I needed to do a massive realignment, and I
Okay.
actually jumped, like I left that without a plan. Now that
Mm.
was scary. That was the scariest moment from a career perspective probably
Oh
that
my
I've
goodness.
ever done, because I
Yes.
did not have, like, I was very successful in that. Couldn't have been like the top of that tree, right?
Okay.
On top of that business, to then go, this is not for me anymore. I'm
Mm.
out. I've grown out of it type of arrangement. I don't have another plan. I'm leaving. Right. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, that was so scary. So obviously from a mentoring perspective, that's when, like, that's how 10X came into my life, because that saw me
Okay.
through that time and actually allowed me to unravel that and make sense of what
Mm.
was going on, and make it kind of okay that you can outgrow things, right? That
Yes.
you just can, and that some business models and some businesses, they have limitations, they have a growth
Mhm.
cap, and if you're a growth driven person, you'll literally drive yourself a bit batty by staying there because you feel hemmed in, right? So there's this kind of, that discord inside can really become a
Yeah.
problem. So, Grant was obviously one of those through that time. But then if I go earlier, another point in my career was I listened to a book by Brian Tracy, No Excuses.
Okay.
That was a real pivotal point for me from a mentoring perspective as well, because that it validated that being very driven,
Mm.
it's okay. Like
Yes.
like working hard, it's actually normal. It's okay. It's like, because culturally, particularly in Australia,
Okay.
and like there's this, everything will be okay. Or have a beer on Friday kind of thing, chill
Mm. Okay.
out, like take a chill pill. It's like, but I don't want to. I don't want to take a chill pill. I want to work, right? Like,
Yeah.
so you're fighting against that message. And then I have from, I think, my grandparents, and my parents were big mentors and influences in my life, because
Okay. Okay.
my dad was an athlete, my grandparents were business owners, but I have always had a coach, for particularly through sport. I've always engaged in having someone as to because you can't see from the inside, you
Mm.
can't see the label on a jar, the writing on a label on
Mhm.
a jar, you can't see that from the inside, so that
So true.
your perspective is always going to be that little bit warped from looking from the inside through your own glasses. So being able to have that external perspective, um, I have always had coaches and mentors.
Okay. Yeah. So that's something that in the beginning, was it something you sought out, or was it kind of built in and then you realized the power and started to seek it out? Or was it something that you've always known, or you knew very early on, you're like, I have to go get this for myself? And through that, then started reaching out to those mentors.
I think it was fairly built in, and then it was when I really started to hit adversity on my own.
Hmm.
Like, I guess for sport wise, well, I would seek it out, because never going to reach the top without having a coach. It's not.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's kind of built into the mentality. But it wasn't until from a career business perspective when I started to hit into, like, it's like, oh, hold on a second, look at successful actions, right?
Mhm.
What's working in other areas? It's like, well, as an athlete, I have a coach, I have mentors. It's like, well, hold on, is there even that in the world
Yes.
of business or career or whatever? So then made sure that I had that. And again, when I first my first job as an occupational therapist, built in, I had the best mentor, and I
Mm.
don't even think I would have survived that where I worked, because it was so extreme out in the desert, I wouldn't have stayed there. I would have lasted a couple of months had I not had her as a mentor through that time, right? So I think a lot of it's been built in to then go, hold on, that works every time, right? And it's a very successful action, and it takes a lot of time out, right? Why? Time is such a precious asset. What the hell are we doing wasting it? So
Absolutely.
Right? Like, why reinvent the wheel? Why waste time when you can have someone on your side, on your team? And sometimes, like, during tough phases in your life, that's the only person championing for you. And certainly from my experience, right? That is, like, there's been times you can do it. And in those times where I'm like, no, I can't, they're like, yeah, you can. Come on, put your big girl pants on. Yes, you can do it. I'm like, okay, if you say so. And off I go, right? Like, in those moments of doubt, because there is not, you know, in the personal development world, I think, Gary, there's a lot of mentality around, I've got to be positive all the time. And, you know, I'm a positive person. It's like, no, you're not. How can you be positive? I think that is the most unrealistic goal I've ever heard. You're setting yourself up to fail if you think you're going to be positive all of the time, because as soon as you're not positive, you think you're failing. No, you're not. It's life. It's normal. You're supposed to have all the emotions. It's not a problem that you have them. So stop trying to avoid them. The issue is, how long do you stay in them?
Yes. And how do you leverage or utilize them, right? And recognize and taking that time to step back and say, okay, I feel this way, but one, it's okay. Two, this is normal, and it's supposed to feel a certain way. And however I feel about it, that is now that is real. That is the perception that becomes the reality there. And it's, what do I do about it? And I think that's where, and especially as you hit on, a mentor or someone who's there to guide you, or especially a coach, right? They can see that happening, and they can kind of stop you before you hit that wall, right? You're like, hey, heads up, you're inches from that wall. Let's take a pause, not hit the wall, and talk about it, because all you have to do is sidestep it, or all you have to do is recognize and acknowledge it. And now, instead of smashing into it, you can climb up and over it. And through your example there, I know, especially with sports being a huge portion of your life, you know, what were some of the levels of success that you reached in sports, and taking that, and I think the way you had said it, it was like a given. I always want the best coach. I always want the best team behind me so that I can reach the top. But I think in some way that is unique. A lot of people would have accepted, this is the coach I have, or this is who's assigned to me. And that's just like, okay, this is my coach, and this is where we're at. But you wanted to do greater things. And I know, but certainly let's share with the audience some of the levels that you were able to reach in that front in particular. And then we'll talk a little more on the business and entrepreneurship.
This is Coach Gary. Wanted to take a moment, got to pay some bills here. I wanted to talk to you guys about something that's extremely important to me, and honestly is one of the primary reasons I've had the success so far last year and this year that I have, and that is 10X Health. So before we show you a little information about 10X Health, I wanted to say my energy is up, my clarity is up. I'm down 37 pounds. I've got the go-ahead, that vigor to play with my little girl, to enjoy time with my wife, and I keep looking forward to continuing to improve, and that is in large part thanks to 10X Health. So if you've been feeling that your energy is low, if you don't have that drive, that motivation that you feel that you really should, especially for the guys out there, it's not all about stuff in the bedroom. There's other things that can be fixed, that can be going on. So if you're looking for that, if you feel those things, it's time. 10X Health is your ticket.
Yeah, so I've been involved in many sports. My very first sport when I was super young, like we were brought into the athletics world. So I would run. So sprinting,
Mm-hmm.
my dad was a runner, and a successful runner. And then, so my dad represented New Zealand at the transplant games.
Wow.
So that was kind of like, that became part of our world. So running was sort of where we started. And then the whole family got involved in rowing. I think, Gary,
Okay.
that was a little bit of a trick for my parents, though, because I only had to do one car run, right? But
Yes.
anyway, great sport. Rowing on a river, not rowing in a
Okay.
boat, not riding, like, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
rowing. And that was an amazing sport. I was very involved with that for a long time. I was one of the youngest people to trial for New Zealand at that time.
Okay. Wow.
Won many, many national titles in every boat size you can think of. And then from there, after that, I was kind of like, what sport next? And then I got introduced to to Olympic weightlifting as a sport.
Okay.
And then went one national level at that. And then after that, I did CrossFit for a little while. And then I went into bodybuilding. So my last kind of most recent sport was bodybuilding, and won my pro card with Miss Fitness Australia in figure bodybuilding. So
Wow. Fantastic.
that's my very short version. Obviously, there's many years in that,
Yes. Yes.
but they would be my kind of biggest sporting achievements.
Yeah, absolutely. And very, very high levels of success, right? And recognize, as you said in the beginning, so not knowing quite the level, it was in part, at least, of course, through your efforts, but in building a team, surrounding yourself with those who could help you, who could get you through some of those most challenging times, to save time, right? Because it's you will never reach the top if you're constantly grinding through each and every problem. So we've got to shortcut that time component.
And I think too, Gary, somewhere along the lines, you have to decide to be the best.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with wanting to be number one. There's nothing wrong, not because you want to be like, don't get me wrong when I say that, whoever's listening, because it can be misinterpreted, right? Like, I've been told in my life, you're so competitive. I'm like, yeah, to a degree I am, to a degree I am not. I am massively competitive with myself. Right? I don't see competition with other people. I see competition with me. Yes. I want to be the best version of myself. And why do something? Like, if I'm going to invest my time into something, why do it if you're just going to do it can I say half-assed? Oh, well, I did.
Half-assed, half-baked, however you want to say it.
Yeah, well, I don't know. You probably say something different, right? But why? Like, why? Because it's the same time investment.
Absolutely.
And I think it's actually more painful to do it half-baked, as you say. Probably more appropriate. Half-baked, like, but half-baked. If you're baking a cake that's a really crappy cake,
that's a terrible.
You don't want to eat it. So no. So, acknowledging that in turn, and I think the more we are okay with, and that was something I had to become very okay with.
Yes.
I just want to be the best. And what's wrong with that? That's okay to want to be the best, which is effectively is just the best version of yourself, and not downplaying what that is. We are so much more capable when we start acknowledging and tapping into that, because then you can go into areas of your abilities that you didn't even know existed.
Sure. And that then starts with, right, before we can accept that and understand it, even, we have to have the awareness of the goal, of the intention of where you're headed. So like you said, realizing I do want to be the best version of myself. And then I think another important measure there that you hit on, but I want to draw more attention to it is, and spotlight it, it's not about competition with others. It really is about, this is what I want and what I need for me, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to achieve that. And along the way, if others want to measure against my performance, then that's fine. Or if we're within, the rules of the game or the rules of business, certainly we have measures that we tend to look at. but it's not the competition itself of measuring against others. It's that I want the best for me. And through that, then, of course, I'm going to place high marks in these other measures that maybe others put so much and such great weight on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's how can I play a game in something, right?
Mm-hmm.
That there is there has to be a measure, because how do you know
Yes.
how you're going if you don't have
Otherwise
a
it's
measure?
aimless.
So you just choose to play whatever game it is, sport, business. It's still a game. You just have
Yes.
different measurement sticks.
Yes. And just as, in business, right, it sucks when you're bad at it. It's a lot of fun when you're winning at it, right? And those are the things I think too is sometimes, whether, you're listening or you're watching and you're thinking is it is important to be successful. It is important to win and to be that best version, because nobody wants to be on the bench. Nobody wants to lose all their games. And certainly if every time you talk to a prospect or a customer, you're not getting the sale, you're losing, it's that same feeling, if not worse, because now there's, all the other components that we bring together as far as financial wellness and everything else. And at some point you're taking on more responsibility than just what does the scoreboard say. And it's really about, this is how I'm providing for not just myself, but now my family too. And I know certainly you've had that experience, and that brings us, I think, a good point to circle back to what you had said was such a scary decision. And would you even go so far as saying that leaving the marketing role in that position was maybe the riskiest decision you've ever made, at least certainly within business?
That leaving that network marketing company was because I had done that for years and years and built a hugely successful. So it was like, and then you've got the golden handcuffs, right, of
Sure.
the financial side, because I was, there was the income, there was also that when you become the thing, right? So the notoriety as well. I would walk into a room and that where I'd be presenting, there might be 400 people, there might be 1,000 people. They're like, oh, you're amazing. So there's all like, you are seen in a certain way. And so when you're like, yeah, but inside I don't feel like this is not where I want to head anymore. I felt responsible for all these, 350 people, plus like that. Yeah. 100%. 100%.
And you had said when you left, you didn't know where so you stepped off really into the abyss, right? You have all this limitless potential, but at that time, at least, not a clear vision of which piece of the potential am I going to utilize next.
Yeah, I had like this, maybe an inkling, but not a plan. And that, like, for me, I like to be organized, planned. I like to feel like I'm in control.
I'm that same way.
Right. So did like, it was the, whoa, do I stay where I am, which I know is not where I want to be anymore, just because it's familiar?
Sure.
Or am I going to, and because that environment had become relatively toxic, for want of a better word, for me.
Okay.
Right. Because I had outgrown it. Like, I was becoming detrimental to myself just as much as anything else, because you're in an environment you just can't drive the ship anywhere, right? So like, there's sort of the self-imploding that can start to happen where you go, well, what am I doing wrong? Why can't I grow it further? Why isn't it growing? Like, trying to figure it out, but you've tapped it out. So it's kind of like, well, do I stay in that because I know it and I know I can be successful at least to this level? Or again, am I going to jump without knowing and then without this plan, and trust in the fact that I'll figure it out, and that drive to live to my full potential is actually more important, because that's how I'm going to look after my family. That's how I'm going to do all of those things. Do I do that? But what am I doing in the meantime? So it was, that was a lot of courage had to come into play to go, you know what, it's more worthwhile for me to just jump and create a space so I can work it out. Like, it was too consuming to be able to work it out whilst I was still involved. I needed to clear it out and go, you know what, I just have to have faith that I can figure it out.
Yes, and I imagine it took some time, right? And to make that decision in the first place, but then two, to really come to terms with now the gravity and the after effects, right? Which I think, now we can agree was a positive thing, and certainly you're happy with it. But in that interim, you're measuring that, or I imagine you were. So tell a little more about the time from making that decision, right? So how long did it take you to come to that realization and decide? And then how long after leaving did it take to find where you are now?
Yeah, so it probably took 12 months, 12 solid months to figure out that leaving decision and how and all of that. A good 12, maybe even 18 from the point to work through it and figure it out, because I had a lot of responsibility too. So, and I thought, no, maybe it's me, maybe I can fix it, so went through that process. Like, I didn't want to leave without knowing that I had done everything I could to fix it. Or what I thought needed fixing. So then, and then after leaving, I would say solidly 3 to 6 months.
Wow. Okay.
Yep. And then still, to this day, like it's been just over 12 months since I've moved on. I think there's still times where I'll find I'm like, all right, because now I'm on back on the journey of the growing as rapidly as I can, putting myself into challenging situations again, putting myself into the unknown every day, and ramping back up the learning of completely new things all of the time, and that rapid growth phase, doing things that I've not done before, having to learn how to do them. That's a constant now. Then it's and it will stay a constant because of the rate at which I will push to grow and want to grow. Then it's this constant new uncomfortable. I don't know if Gary, do I think that will ever change? I don't know. I think I'll keep discovering areas of myself where it's like, that doesn't serve me anymore. That thinking doesn't serve me anymore. Well, what am I going to replace that with? Okay, that thinking doesn't serve me anymore. And is that related to that experience or some other experience? Who knows? So I would say 3 to 6 months to kind of really consolidate me again and put myself back together. But then there's a level of constantness when you choose to take on this way of living. There is a level of constant discomfort. But
especially when you operate, and not to cut you off, but especially when you're operating at 10x levels, right? So massive action at all times, the very rapid growth. And when you're speaking rapid growth, you're not talking, oh, we're growing. You're talking massive amounts of growth, always pushing ahead, always taking on new things that are, you're breaking the system. And then you have to figure out, okay, now how do we make the system work at this level? And it's like a muscle where we're going to break it again. And then we know it's going to come back and it'll be stronger and better. But we're constantly doing that. And one of the, I guess, words that comes to mind through that is, and maybe if you agree or disagree, let me know, is adaptability and innovation, right? So embracing that change, keeping that fast-paced world, but then really working to always flow with it and to overcome it. Is that something that you see, especially now in your day-to-day, coming to the forefront?
Yeah, I think fluidity, right, is fluidity in change and growth has had to become something like losing the rigidity. Okay, this is what's happening. This is where I'm heading.
Yes.
You can want that, and you can know, but there's a lot more of that. That fluidity and because you're constantly testing boundaries, right? Constantly on that. Okay, where is that boundary? Where is that? Okay, great. All right, not there. Okay, way over there. Or okay, I'm past it. I better get everything else to catch up now. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. And through that, then, is there maybe one particular moment that really showcases that, as far as the innovation or the adaptability really then being required in a very, I guess, visceral or forward way, and maybe in a way that challenged you. You're like, wow, I didn't think I could be that flexible, but here I am, and I'm pushing through it. And now on the other side, I recognize, wow, okay, that was really a moment where I did have to adapt very, very rapidly, or maybe a big swing of adaptation, whether or not it happened quickly, but where it was a massive change.
Yeah, and I think that was when I jumped ship
Mm.
from the network marketing company, right? In terms of because I had built that up to, as big as it could go within that company, and then to jump ship, that was that moment, right? Where it took the biggest level of adaptability and moving out of living in a known, because it had become very known. I knew what to do. I knew exactly how many leads I needed to generate. I knew how to generate them. I knew what, if I placed this ad up, I knew what to write. I knew, like ding, 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 like clockwork, right? Like I knew those were those things. And I'm like, and so to then move into, okay, I'm going to wipe all of that. I mean, you take the knowledge. So do you really wipe it all clean? No. So take that knowledge, but then it's everything else is, okay, I'm effectively going to start again.
Yes.
But then I get to start again, building it in a way that is right for me on my terms, in a structured way. I mean, I have the power of the 10x brand. So is it all, completely? No, because, I can tap into so much great information.
Sure.
But effectively, I think that would be that moment. And that took the most flexibility from me. But I also realized, we can become really rigid in our thinking when something becomes very familiar. And if we get too familiar, we actually, like I can recognize in that I had actually stopped growing. And that's not good, right? Like that is not a good place because it was so familiar.
So it went from familiar to maybe even comfortable, right?
Yeah,
It was just,
to be comfortable.
I'm good.
Yeah, and I think even though I was uncomfortable, which is kind of weird, I think though you choose your discomfort, right? Everyone knows that growth is outside of your comfort zone, and I don't think there's a person on the planet that has not heard that terminology.
No.
However, in terms of that, we can choose our uncomfortable, because it's not like most people's world's comfortable and they love it and they love every aspect, right? So are you going to choose the uncomfortable that or am I going to choose the uncomfortable that I don't know? Both are uncomfortable. Which one's going to provide me with the most growth and the pathway to the goal that I want? Well, it's actually going to be that growth uncomfortable phase of a lot of what I don't know, then but that provides the pathway to where I want to be. So I'm like, I'm going to choose that. I'm going to keep choosing that.
And what a powerful way to think of it, right? And it's so true, because the world is full of uncomfort, is full of suffering, even in many instances. So if we can choose, right, it's more difficult to choose to act now and to be uncomfortable in this moment than it is oftentimes to just let things be. And I know that's something that comes up with clients, whether you're coaching them or from the body material or from your own experiences, is, do you want to change and become who you need to reach the next level? Or do you want things to just stay where they are? And that is then the ultimate comfort of choosing, this level of comfort is more comfortable than that. And for clients to see that and to break them out of that mode of thinking. And it continues then as you're always building, you're always growing and looking to be the best version of yourself. And I know that as part of that, you have some targets, and you're looking to hit certain things, to leave a certain impact or even legacy on the world. And I'm curious, what is, from a business standpoint, primarily the legacy that you would like to be known for, that you would like to leave as your imprint on the world?
Yeah. So for me, the footprint that I'm driven to leave is to make a difference is to small business owners, to have them be able to be extremely successful, create the wealth and the life that they want. But more than that, because the reason for that behind that is because that creates an impact on the community. And then if we go to the underlying legacy that I really want to leave, is that changes the family unit. And that's the generational change, right? So those business owners are then a demonstration to their family members of healthy growth, healthy wealth, and that then the next generation can learn. And that is what's going to change the world, that generational change, the demonstration to our children, having a healthy family unit, because there's so much that's not that. And I think
there is.
bringing it back to the home, where from helping that small business owner to then collectively bring their family unit together, which is probably why they damn well started their business in the first place. Let's face it, that's a lot of the drive from a lot of people is provide for my family. But providing for your family goes so far beyond just money, right? And absenteeism. So bringing all of that into a healthy way, so then they can have their healthy family unit, which is what they wanted in the first place. That is what I want to do.
Wow, fantastic. And what a worthy goal to achieve is not just impacting your direct clients and yourself, but really looking then, as you said, the multi-generational impact. And that then builds a community of like-minded individuals who all want to, one, be better for themselves, but two, then start to realize, or brought up with that realization that as a community, we can be stronger when we work together. And I think that that's something, certainly in the 10X community, I hope that, you find that, and I know that I find that is a common thread of wanting to do better together as a group, and will empower you towards that impact, towards that legacy that you certainly look to leave. So I want to thank you, of course, for coming on today. It's been very powerful to hear your story and all of your insights. And before we sign off, for our listeners and our viewers, I wanted to ask if you could share what's the best way to get a hold of you. What's the best way, to reach out and to contact into the future and get a hold of Wonder Woman from Down Under.
Yeah, so the easiest way people can reach me on my socials, and my handle is the Alison Wheeler Coaching. So that's Instagram, Facebook.
Perfect.
People can track me down there. They can just shoot me a DM. More than happy to chat.
Awesome. And if they want to take another level and get just a little more engaged, I understand you have a little something that can help them in that journey to gain some extra awareness.
100%. So I would love to offer people the opportunity to take my quiz, which is your 7-figure CEO quiz. So it is about understanding yourself and the pathway for how you're going to get to that 7-figure income, the roadmap, the strategy. So to give you that little bit more insight into who are you as that person, who are you as that future person, and what's the roadmap for you to actually get there. And people can get that from that's what they get. They get a report at the end of the quiz.
Wonderful. And that I'll link into our show notes here so everybody can get a hold of it. And please do reach out to Alison. She is incredible. One of a very, very select group of coaches trusted by Grant Cardone himself. She may be too modest to say that, but I will certainly say it for her. So part of an extremely elite group of coaches. Definitely reach out to Alison for any help on that front. And of course, I hope you all have an amazing, incredible 10X day. And this has been an episode of Grow with Gary, Modern Life and Business, where we humanize success.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Grow with Gary. You're officially one step closer to crushing your business goals. Be sure to subscribe wherever you heard this podcast so you never miss a future episode. Connect with Gary by reaching out on social media at McHughGrowth or online at mchughgrowth.com/podcast. And be sure to include a comment with your top takeaway. Until next time, this has been Grow with Gary.